but we had real texts and conversations. So I think the shift was there was no instant mental gratification of a Facebook and Instagram like. So this generation is growing up with the clickbait stuff, which there's a positive to it, but there's also a dark side to it. But I think that's the shift, is that they have less in-person meaningful conversations and experiences where a lot of their communication is with the device.
Welcome to What I Meant to Say. I'm your host, Wendy Jones, founder of Be Better Media and a mom of 4, passionate about human connection. Throughout my journey, I have experienced many What I Meant to Say moments. But since life doesn't give us do-overs, I've created a space to reflect and tell our stories again, with a little more grace for ourselves and the hope that we can help others and be better for having listened. Welcome to What I Meant to Say. I'm your host, Wendy Jones, and I'm here today with Derick Johnson. He is a U.S. Army veteran turned life coach that uses so much of the wisdom that he's used from his own path to help other people improve their lives. And I'm really excited to have this conversation today. So thanks for joining me.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, we met through Podmatch. I can't say enough about the cool people that they have turned me on to, and these conversations just keep getting better. So, I was really interested to see, your life coaching and the way that you blend physical coaching and life coaching to help people create stronger paths in their lives. I know that a lot of that comes from the wisdom that you have gained from your past. So let's kind of start there and tell me a little bit about your, growing up and what led you to the military.
Yeah, for sure, Wendy. So growing up, my father was U.S. Army. So he was in the Army for 25 plus years. And as a child, we lived in Germany for a few years. We were stationed there. And my mother's German as well. So my father is African-American. He's from the country. So he's from Mississippi. He was a farm boy. And my mother was a city girl in Germany. They're both the oldest of all their siblings. So they raised their brothers and sisters, cousins, aunts, uncles, like the whole setup. They were leading the family. So they grew up quick. And so both of them had a really wild upbringing. And then going into careers, they were very successful. So when it came to discipline, management, leadership, success, teaching, and all that, they crushed it and were well known in their industries. But on the personal level, they just, I guess, didn't do the inner work that they needed to get over past traumas, PTSD, and so forth. So me being the youngest of the kids, they would release after they would drink alcohol. And it only would happen at night for a few hours, but it would happen like 300 nights out of the year between age 11 to 17. But the first time that it happened, I was 11, and I was just caught off guard because I was a good kid, AB honor roll in sports, just accolades, and I'll just focus on school and sports. That's all I did. And I realized at the age of 12 that they were just releasing. So it really wasn't to me. It was just like, hey, he's a physical, verbal, or emotional punching bag or whatever. They had to release. But in those time periods, I would learn to like mentally tap out to view myself. So what I would do as a teenager was I would be getting yelled at, whatever was happening, and I would look at future self, at my current self, and I would look at my younger version at my current, and I would just like perspective hop. I don't know where it came from, but then the older I got, my dad would play Tony Robbins cassette tapes, Les Brown, other speakers, and I would relate. I was like, wait, I used to do this. So at the age of 12 and 13, I would absorb all this information, and that's when I started reading Napoleon Hill and all the self-development stuff. And so like I grew up quick, but I always had a perspective that I said, life is happening life is happening for me, not to me. And I first heard that from Tony Robbins, and it really stuck with me. And then that really helped me to see things differently. So I never really held that much anger or aggression or sadness towards family. It was more so, hey, they went through these things. They did not get the help that they needed. So how can I flip this pain into fuel? So essentially, fitness was my outlet, because being bullied at home, being bullied in school, I just got sick and tired of being the skinny kid. So I dove deep into the bodybuilding magazines, Men's Health, Arnold's book, Bruce Lee, just all the stuff. And then within about 2 years, I gained a ton of muscle, not to fight the bullies, but more so to be confident within myself. And then at that point, with the transformation at the age of 15 to 16, all my friends wanted to learn how I did that. So that's what got me into training. And then like I just started careers from there. But that's the backstory on that. Essentially being bullied from family and then in school, but never really seeing it from a victim standpoint, always seeing it as a challenge and a test. And I don't know where that came from, but the older I got, I realized that I was doing like shadow work. I was doing alter ego. I was doing all these different modalities just, I don't know where it came from, but it just worked because I wouldn't be present for the pain after a certain extent. I would like tap out and just do this mental game. So it was very interesting. So the older I got, I realized that, hey, I'm destined for the coaching path because of my experiences and the military and sports. So long story short, that's basically the path that I went from there is sports in school, ROTC in school and college, and then full-time military, and then training within the military, and then also afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what was coming to me there, was just that you really are a natural coach, because that ability to, see things from a different perspective and realize that things are not about you. That's a unique gift. But I wonder, as you're helping other people, not everybody has that perspective. So how do you work with people when their lens is flipped and they don't have that perspective where they can help themselves? Like, everything is within us to unlock our own potential, but not everybody sees that the way that you did. So how do you help other people see that?
Great question. So what I do, we first try to pinpoint what their specific pattern is. So for some people, they crush it in their career, but they neglect their health. Or some, they go all out in health, but then they're struggling financially. So we just try to pinpoint where their weakness is and why that is a weakness. Where did that financial fear come from? Did it come from family? Did it come from an uncle? Whatever it is, we try to first pinpoint. What is the pattern and what do they resort to when stress and anxiety goes up? So many people, they use vices, not even just the basics of drugs and alcohol. They'll use food. They'll use social aspects just to be around people because they won't face their own thoughts. They use Netflix. They use all these 15 apps just for likes, and just everybody has their thing. So that is always step one, is we try to pinpoint what the pattern is, but we're neutral about it. So we're not judging ourselves. I'm not judging them. We're more so looking at them as if they're a science project and we're doing a hypothesis. Hey, this is happening with this. This is your normal reaction when this happens. Where did this come from? And then we dive deeper. So that is step one. And step two is we try to pinpoint what can they eliminate in their everyday routine that isn't serving them. Yeah. Commonly, it is food or what they're drinking. Besides that, it's what they're consuming on social media, or if they're watching the media and the news, all the toxic information, or it's listening to too many opinions. So we slowly eliminate some things that aren't helping them so they can think clear before we try to change a schedule, push some new information into their mind. We first extract the negative or what's not helping them. And then on top of that is pinpoint where did this pattern start, and then give them clarity. So anytime that they have clarity and say, wow, that is why I do this. Okay. So I do this in career and that spills over into relationships. No wonder. So all those moments of clarity, we take control of that. So we have a quick path. So essentially, if people don't really know the difference between life coaching and therapy, both work. I have nothing as therapists, but what I notice is with a lot of people that had therapists, they had them for 5 to 15 years and they're just repeating the same problems every Tuesday and Thursday, but they're not really having solutions. Yes, it's amazing to release, to let out, but if that person has talked about this issue for 5 to 10 years and hasn't gotten to a new place physically, mentally, or spiritually, then my opinion is it's not that effective, because how many times are you going to repeat yourself and put yourself into that dark state? So we just focus on solutions. We say, yes, this did happen. We're going to be neutral, but let's work on this so you can thrive in more than one area. Because usually people are amazing in one or two things, but then they kind of neglect or try to hide these other aspects. And that's what we try to face by not judging ourselves.
Yeah, that's that shadow work. It really does. It's so impactful. And I don't think, often we don't realize the limiting beliefs that are in our minds until we can do some of this work. But it takes a lot of bravery and kind of hitting a point in your life to be able to do that work. And oftentimes it's something that's really painful. How do you recommend, like, being honest with yourself? How do you help people really be honest with themselves? And to figure out what those limiting beliefs are?
For sure. So one of the exercises we first do, we do a transparency exercise where we draw a big circle and we have 4 quadrants. The first quadrant, they go as deep as possible in clarity of their goals. So most people will say, I want to be rich, I want to be successful, I want to be happy. And we're like, okay, sounds great. But what is the financial goal. Like, how much do you want to make a month? What do you want in saving? What do you want? Are you into crypto? Are you into real estate? And then start to get them to dive deeper. So first we take some time to really pinpoint specifics, hyper specifics from the inside, from the outside, where they live, their relationships. So we'll start with that. And many people, they haven't really written down their goals and their dreams on paper, unless it was school related and they had to. But most people, they just say vague statements and vague phrases, and they don't have an emotional connection to it. So that's why they never feel like they'll get there, is because it's just like floating up here.
Absolutely. And I'm fascinated by that, because I've encountered that even in my own life. There's something scary about getting really specific, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
What do you think that is with people when it's really scary to get that specific about what you want?
I think it's because family and people in their lives spoke down to them so many times that they said something crazy or non-realistic, unrealistic, too far out there. That doesn't happen for our people or for women, or everybody's heard these different sayings. And I feel like that's ingrained into our subconscious. So they don't want to say it out loud, even though their conscience says, I'm the black sheep of my family or of my circle. But everyone around me, if I speak about massive grand goals, they're going to say, oh, you think you're better than us, or, oh, you're crazy, or, hey, the guy down the road tried that and he failed. You should go the easy path or go the security path, whatever it is. But I think it's preconceived notions from other people. They place it on us. And many people in our circle that we grew up with, they see and speak to us as if we're still 14 or 16. So if we talk about a huge goal, they're speaking to 14-year-old fitness Derick, and they're like, oh, he's a protein guy. And it's like, okay, now the 14-year-old is just talking about protein and fighting anymore. So I think it's multiple things of that in people's circles. So limiting beliefs they get from them, being put down so many times, being told to shut up. So all these different things are in their subconscious. So when they think about the massive goal, it makes them smile. And then those inner voices from other people or themselves start to creep back in. So they're just about to penetrate the veil of what is success to them. And they're like, yeah, that's not really for me. And then they retreat. And they were just about to say it or write it down. And that fear is there. But I do think it comes from others and their experiences. So what I like to do is peel back all those things that are on people. Basically, I think about it as a shell or skin. We get that stuff off of us to say, no, this is actually what I want. So let's find proof of other people that have done it or something close to it. Because if they see proof, then they're like, wait a minute. Like the first time humans broke the 5-minute mile, people said the heart would explode if you run a mile faster than 5 minutes. And the first gentleman that did it, he did it in like 4 minutes. He basically did it in the high 4 minutes, and he did it. And after that, hundreds of other people started to do it within the next couple of months. But before that, they said the human body, it's not possible. So sometimes we just need to see proof 1 or 2 times, and then people get excited. So that's what I like to remind people of, is peel off what we got from others, limiting beliefs, find proof of somebody that has done what you're aiming to do, and try to reverse engineer their path before all the other stuff. But just by seeing that, it gets them excited, because they're like, wait a minute, this is proof. Like, this isn't fake. And everybody else said you can't. Focus on the proof, because that's all you need.
Yeah. There's like I'm having 2 different thoughts on everything you just said. The first one I want to tap into is that concept of being the black sheep, and you are, pushing limits and pushing your potential. It can get really lonely, and it can feel, like people aren't supporting you, or like not, they're just not there. That community feeling of where you were before falls away. And, how do you help people when they're feeling like that black sheep?
That's a great analogy. And what I like to remind them of is that many people, and this comes from Napoleon Hill's Outwitting the Devil, they're drifters. So we coined the phrase drifters. They're basically like just going through life, getting blown by the wind. They don't really have a major passion. They don't have a major rush or a huge purpose, something bigger than them that they're chasing. They're just coasting along, going through the motions. So anybody that has that fire and passion and desire of a bigger picture, they make them uncomfortable. It doesn't mean that they're above them, but this group of people get uncomfortable around this person because they have so much life in them and so much drive, whether it comes from lightness or whether it comes from the dark. But they have to remember that the majority of society, family, friends included, are drifters. And it just is what it is. It's a neutral standpoint that they live the same year after year, decade after decade. and they just enjoy the trips, the getaways, the weekend drink, like each of their own, but deep down, they're not really fulfilled. So if they're surrounded by these people, it's hard for them to see the bigger picture because they are the black sheep. They feel like the black sheep. And maybe in their town, in their city, they haven't met anyone in person that thinks like them. But the moment they do, whether they join a mastermind, they go to a seminar, they join a Facebook group, and they're like, wait a minute, there's people posting my thoughts. Like, this is, I'm not the crazy one. And once you start to meet other people, you get excited about life and you're like, holy shit, there's other people that think like me.
Yeah.
So I think it's just to remind them is that, yes, it's annoying to be around some people. Yes, it might hold you back at first, but you also have to see, hey, I'm thinking about my city, my town, my state. Who else is out there? And have I done the work to actually show up to these meetups? Do I actually get out there to meet people? Because many people don't, because that's where another thing comes from of social anxiety. That comes from family and friends as well. So like, there's all these different layers, but once you peel those off, they can say, wow, all I had to do was step foot into this event, meet these other people, have one conversation just to say, whoa, I'm not alone. And when they don't feel alone because they see a group of entrepreneurs, business people, people that love social media, whatever the case is, they get excited and they're like, this is amazing. And it goes back to what I mentioned earlier. They just have to see proof, even if they're in a different field. They just have that energy and drive. They're like, wow, everybody in this room or on this call has life in them of a bigger purpose. This is interesting because most people are just coasting, ready for the Sunday football game. And it's like they live for those things.
And you know, it's okay if you're comfortable where you are, right? Without that judgment. But for people that are looking to be more and do more and push their potential, that feeling of uncomfortability is always there until we push and go to a place, you know? So yeah, it is finding our people, and the world is so much more connected these days. And that is the upside, right, of social media and the way that we can have these conversations from, you know, different points in the country, and it's no big deal. And I always encourage, and that's part of the reason I love telling these stories, is just connecting people that you wouldn't otherwise meet. But man, like if you did, you'd meet up and have a great time. And that's I think the upside of where we are in the world today, because it is so much more connected. But that also brings on, you mentioned social anxiety, and that's something I hear about a lot. I have 4 kids and they're 23 to 16. And among you, just in that generation, you hear those words a lot right now, that I have social anxiety. And, you know, I think we attach a lot to those labels, and I think there's a way to peel back from them and help the next generation understand like what that really is. Do you have an opinion on, you know, what is that social anxiety? Where is it coming from? And how can we help them make it better?
Yes, for sure. So I'm 33 years old. I'm bringing that up because I grew up with cassette tapes, DVDs, MP3 players, CD players, big headphones and all that. And then we shifted into the landlines. My dad would get pissed off when I switched the fax machine and the internet and all that. So growing up with this version, we did have social media. So we were there with MySpace and all that. But right before MySpace, we were always outside with each other. And then like my first phone, I didn't get till I was 16, and it was a Razor. Didn't send or receive pictures. It just had the snake game, but we had real texts and conversations. So I think the shift was there was no instant mental gratification of a Facebook and Instagram like. So this generation is growing up with the clickbait stuff, which there's a positive to it, but there's also a dark side to it. So I think that's the shift, is that they have less in-person meaningful conversations and experiences where a lot of their communication is with the device. So if we use that example, that's how they're growing up. That happened to many adults during quarantine. So people that didn't have social anxiety before quarantine started to have it because all they did was digitally communicate. And then the doors open in whatever city or state somebody was in, you get invited to a dinner or lunch or an event, and people were like cringing to even go there. And it's the people that they know and love. But for 3 months or 4 months straight, they were texting and sending video calls or doing FaceTime. But then when it came to seeing them in person, so I'm bringing up these examples because I feel like our version of us experiencing quarantine is like how they've been most of their life, where everything is just digital communication. So if it's not sports related or at a concert or at like some fun leisure event, there's not really deep conversations about insecurities. What do you want to do in 5 years? And those things, it's less common, where it's more so like, hey, let's go do this. It's fun. and there's less deep meaning and things of that nature. So I do think that if they can see that and just pause for a moment. And another thing is, if you've seen those pictures on Facebook or Instagram where they have a basket at the front door of a home and it says, put your phone here, I would challenge people to do that. Like if they're hanging out for 2 hours and if there's a group of 10, can they have dinner without touching their phone? Most people can't because we're all addicted to these things.
Yeah.
It's like our leg feels like it's vibrating and the phone's on the table. And you're like,
yeah,
my thigh just vibrated. The phone's not even in my pocket. Like what is going on? I need to get away from this right now.
It
So
is. The dopamine rush is crazy.
Exactly. It's scary. Yeah. So I definitely would say you don't have to delete social media. Some are extreme about it, but just go back to the basics and say, where did the social anxiety come from? Was I good at it as a child because I wasn't comparing myself to others? Because children don't have that. They'll talk to anyone. Even the quiet kid, he's just talking to himself, playing. He doesn't necessarily have anxiety. He might just not know what to say, but he's not comparing himself. But I think once we're introduced to the internet, and then we see the perfect girl, see the perfect guy, perfect relationship, car, this, they went to Disney and I can't, and I'm working, and all this comparison, it cripples people because they feel they're not doing enough. Yeah. And then they tend to realize that many of these people, they're just playing a character online, that a lot of it's fake anyway. Facetune, Photoshop, fake money, rented cars. Like it's wild what people do now. And when they meet some of these people in person, they realize even they have social anxiety because they're playing this perfect character online, and they just have to zoom out and say, you know what? Let me go back to the simple handshake and eye contact and just start talking to people. But a simple task anyone could do is in public, anytime that they're in public, give one person a compliment. At the gas station, hey, nice shirt. We're not hitting on them. We're just giving a genuine compliment and not looking to receive anything. Talk to the old lady in the grocery store, ask her why she chose that pasta over this pasta, just normal, real human interactions. And watch what happens. Because we've all received that on a day where we didn't feel like talking to anyone. We had RBF face, and somebody approached us. We get in the car, we're like, wow, I needed that little 3-minute interaction. How did they even approach me? Yeah. And then you realize you're like, I haven't verbally talked to anybody in 4 days, unless it was work related. And they're like, wow, I needed that. And giving people more of those moments.
Yeah. And I don't think people realize how we withdraw when something is uncomfortable inside us and we start to isolate. And I think that happened a lot, like you were saying, during quarantine and during COVID, because I was never a coffee shop goer. Like I did not frequent Starbucks until after COVID. And now I kind of have a little Starbucks budget because I realized how much after that going in there, my perspective changed because that person behind the counter that remembered me, that remembered my order, that I didn't otherwise have any other connection to it. It meant so much more after being isolated.
Oh yeah.
Even as an introvert, that was something I really learned. Like everybody needs that connection. Even if you're one of those people that like really does appreciate your quiet time, everybody needs that human connection. And loneliness is a huge epidemic out there. And it worries me because yes, this is great, but we do need in-person deep conversation, and that if we're out of practice, it feels very uncomfortable.
Exactly. So, the last thing that I would leave people with is, I don't hear enough people talk about this. I challenge everybody at all ages to go to improv once or twice a month, even if they're not trying to get into acting or modeling. The reason why is because everybody's playing a character. People have seen Whose Line Is It Anyway? That's literally all it is. You pick up a note card. All right, he's going to be the dog. He's a doctor. And they just make a random scene. But the thing is, there's no audience. Usually there's no audience. It's just a class. And everybody's acting a character. And it releases that inner child. And a lot of people that have gone to it, like I dabbled in modeling and all that. And then I went to a few classes and I met a lot of people that outside beforehand, they were like, I used to not be able to hold a conversation, but now I'm acting like a child on stage or just doing these random skits, and they got out of themselves. And then from there, everything went up, whether it's group presentation at work, speaking in a class, speaking to a stranger. But I would challenge people to do that. So 1, give people genuine compliments in public. And then 2, once or twice a month, go to improv. And usually the first class is free. They'll be surprised what happens. Yes, it's uncomfortable. And I challenge people also, don't go there after you drank 5 drinks. Just go there sober and just say, hey, everybody's here for one thing. We all might feel awkward, but at the end, You're going to be laughing. You met new people. You go in your car. You're like, wow, I don't know what just happened this past hour and a half, but I feel good.
That's
Guarantee you, most people will have that feeling.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I can see how that'd be such a huge confidence builder, because anytime you do something that you're uncomfortable with, in that regard, it's amazing the confidence that's on the other side of it. I love that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. I've had a lot of conversations on my podcast with other veterans. And so
Okay.
I wanted to go back to a little bit, there's a real mental health crisis among our military service members and veterans. And it's a cause that's close to my heart, and it scares me a lot because I really feel like those are the Americans that we need to be taking amazing care of. And I know there's a mentality in the military because you guys are so strong and you do so much for this country, but it's kind of a stuff it down. We're really strong. We keep going, battle
Yes.
through all kinds of things, whether it's, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and you guys learn how to do that. But I see the other side, knowing that you have this military background and seeing where you are now, I'm wondering if you have a message out there for guys who are struggling with those things coming out of the military.
Yes, definitely. I would aim to join groups, as in just have some camaraderie. So myself and a few veteran guys, we do a weekly Wednesday call, absolutely free. Every Wednesday we get on Zoom. There's like 10 to 30 of us. Some are military, some aren't. But we started it during quarantine because the general conversations were not helping anyone, like Tom Brady, Kobe, whoever. We're just talking about celebrities. It didn't help anybody. So we created a group, and basically we meet on Wednesdays, and all we talk about is one topic. So like tomorrow's call is public speaking, and then we do a round robin. The next week it might be anxiety, but that's our whole intent. So I would join groups that are like that, where you speak about real things and they focus on one topic at a time. And then you have, whether it's a Facebook group, whether it's a closed app, however they communicate between the calls, you can at least let guys know what's on your mind. Hey, does anybody have resources for him? He's doing a career transition. So step one, have some camaraderie. Make sure there are veterans. So it's not just like they're the black sheep again, and they're like, wow, they don't understand me. So if they do have a few veterans or veterans only, that would help the most. Step one, the camaraderie, because that is the key thing that military misses afterwards. It's pretty similar to an athlete who's about to retire or had an injury. When they get out, they almost lose their identity, and they don't know what their identity is because they were always a soldier or always an athlete. And they're like, what else do I do? And a lot of them go into a dark place. But if they still have a team, have camaraderie, trust, and know people actually understand them, every human, men and women, anybody, all we want is to be heard and understood. So if you can be around people that can hear you and actually listen, and not just be like, hey, yeah. No, I was listening. You said this about your dinner, and everybody gets annoyed about that. And that's why a lot of people don't talk to anybody, because nobody's listening actively. But if they join these groups with the intent to help uplift others, whether it's men or women that are veterans, that will be step one. And besides that, there are lots of resources, but I would first start with the human aspect of people that relate to you, have the experiences, because once you share, he shares, you're like, wow, they were there too. He was in Iraq, he was in Afghanistan, he grew up with alcoholic parents. Okay, they understand me. Yeah. So that's definitely the most powerful thing. Outside of any of the resources, start with that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's an amazing way to break generational chains and turn that pain into purpose. And
oh yeah,
that's definitely, my North Star is recognizing what these generational challenges that we've had and how we can use them to become better people. And then that ripple effect that goes out from there. And I love that because I see it in your coaching and your story. It's really so inspiring.
I appreciate it. And the best part is once they learn what this male or female went through, they're like, wow, I thought that they were just a gifted athlete. I thought that they always had leadership skills. I thought he was always good at public speaking. So myself, I was the quiet kid. I was getting bullied at home and at school. I didn't say a word in class. I wasn't scared or nervous, but one, I'd be half asleep because we had crazy nights. Two, I didn't know what to say, and I would just sit there, but I would observe the room. And I was always the observer. And I feel like a lot of kids who go through traumatic family things, they're always hyper aware because things were always thrown at them. They were about to yell. So the older you get, the better you are with people, because since your childhood, you were literally in the corner just watching. You had to go with your parents to this party, to this event, to this function, and you're just a quiet kid, just taking in information. And if they really look back in hindsight and say, wow, I was really good at learning people's patterns, a lot of people that had trauma, they all have a gift. So I feel like my gift was discernment. So I'm bringing this up because if somebody joins a group, they'll notice somebody else can meet them at their level. And that person has a gift of discernment where the gentleman or lady that joins the group feels heard and understood in a non-judgmental way, where they're like, wow, they're listening. They repeated back actually what I said. They understood and they asked me more. And they're like digging the hole deeper to peel out everything. But it's very interesting.
No, that's a huge, that discernment and that meeting them where they are, that's a huge unlock right there. It helps people so much. I mean, both the listener and the talker. People don't realize this. The gift of listening, we learn so much. It's amazing.
Exactly. I just want to give one last perspective on that is when people don't feel like they are heard or understood, the person that is not listening or trying to overtalk and do whatever, they usually are uncomfortable because they can feel the conversation's about to go deep. They haven't faced themselves. So when you're about to go deep at the Wednesday dinner or Taco Tuesday night, and they're like, yeah, so did you hear about Tom Brady? And did you hear about this? And so-and-so has a new album coming out or T Swift concert, like they'll change the subject or they'll stop listening. That person, maybe they're nice, maybe they love you, maybe they care, but you're pinpointing and agitating, not trying to, but you're pinpointing, agitating their insecurity because they haven't faced themselves. So they can't really absorb you because they haven't faced themselves. So they just want somebody where we can both kind of push things under the rug and just play happy and just talk about everything else. Where again, if people want to do that, hey, that's fine. But I just want to remind people of that perspective is one, some people have discernment and they'll meet you where you're at. Others, they don't, but it's also because of a fear, because they're uncomfortable to have the deep conversations because once they start talking, that might make you cry. Once he starts talking, that person might get angry. So people's past trauma start to come up. So they feel the boiling, they feel the tears they feel the palms sweaty, they feel these things happening psychologically, and they're like, retreat, retreat, retreat. Let's talk about something that we can all relate to. Hey, what are you ordering for dinner?
Yeah. So that small talk, it's that small talk that kind of keeps your nervous system because you're tapping into that fight or flight that people have been trained into us through all of the experiences in our lives. And you brought up a lot of the ones that are traumatic, especially, growing up in alcoholic homes, or if you have that pattern, which I realize whether it was in your home or it's been generations past in a family, the patterns of addiction and numbing really limit human potential. And it's getting past those patterns and learning how to unpack them in a way that's not shame-filled and not judgment. And that's something I wanted to kind of to round this out, because this is a topic I could talk about for you. But that concept that everybody is doing the best they can, but there are a lot of times in our lives where for us to be able to move on and thrive, we have to forgive people. How do you help others forgive people in their lives that, we could look at it like somebody harmed us, but really what we need to do is forgive?
That's a great question. I would first say that not everybody is in a state to forgive. For myself, I went through years as a child when I would hold that anger. So in my head, I had a vision that I was going to become successful and have a duffel bag of cash and go to my parents' house and drop in and say, I did what I said I would, throw in the middle finger. And that was like 15-year-old thoughts, just like, I'm going to make rapper and athlete money and just toss the bag and say, screw you guys for all the darkness. And then like at age 17, 18, I was like, that's a stupid concept. I said, yeah, visually it might seem interesting because that inner child is angry. But the other side was, no, when I see them again, it's more so, hey, before we have a conversation and we argue about whatever I did when I was 15, could you sit down? I'd like to play you some videos, and I'm going to play them. And this is literally what I'm planning to do, but I'm going to play them videos of testimonials, and they'll see clients 70 years old, 20 years old. They'll see some of their old friends that got some changes from the inside out. And then after we watch a ton of videos, then we could say, okay, would you like to have a real conversation? Because then they'll see proof. So I'm bringing this up because the forgiveness didn't happen for me until I did work on myself. So I would start with step one. What is the boundary that I need to set up? So my best boundary that I did for my mind, my business, my relationship was I changed my phone number. I'm not suggesting this to everybody, but I'm just being blunt. I changed my phone number because I would get drunk texts, voicemails, like 30 every other day. So you're mid-call, you're in a meeting, you're in class, you're excited, you're on a date, you see your phone light up, you're like, oh, it's my mom, oh, it's my dad, oh, it's another family member who's in those dark times. And that would totally derail the thought process, the focus, and all that. So my line was my phone number. They can email me, they can message me on social media, they all end up in the message request, so I can see it. They don't know if I saw it, but I have the power because I no longer give people the reaction that they expect. So going back to the person is, do I need to draw a line? I'm not telling people to cut everybody off, but the line literally could just be as simple as changing a phone number, which costs 30 to 50 bucks, might be the best money anybody's ever spent. Besides that is, do I need to get rid of some of these people on social media because they only post negative stuff? So I would first start with the boundaries, because it is actually you being selfish for a moment, which makes you selfless. Because if I'm in a better state, our conversation flows better. If you're in a better state, if they're in a better state, people will feel that radiation, that energy. So set the boundaries so you can work on yourself. And then it's interesting because they're like, wow, I'm so much more focused in the gym, at work, this, that. Things are flowing together easier. The path to success is not easy, but things are flowing smoother. People, when they feel that, their confidence goes up, everything starts to elevate. And then at that point, I would suggest, okay, how do you feel? Do you want to forgive them? Are you still holding the anger? Because at that point, when they've seen what they're capable of with themselves, then some people, they don't even care to forgive because they're like, it kind of just like floated away. Or they're like, that anger got pushed into success or something. So it's very interesting. And I don't hear enough people talk about that because some are two sides. You need to forgive, F them. You need to forgive or F them. Like there's no other option.
Right.
It's like, do I cut everybody off and not have a family? Or do I just forgive and then I just keep forgiving people and keep getting trampled on by everybody in my life? So I would look at it as set up boundaries, do some deep inner work to make yourself proud and confident, and then reassess, hey, who would I like to forgive? Who even deserves it? Or who do I need to love from a distance? Because sometimes it's like that, where we just look at the historical data and say, hey, 99% of the time when I'm around these people, something negative happens. 99% of when I'm around these people, even if I don't like them, it's always a positive interaction. So sometimes you got to weigh it out.
No, that is a beautiful answer. I love the context there, because you're right. I mean, so often it's not it's not black and white. It's these shades of gray, and really taking care of ourselves. Lends itself to so many beautiful relationships, but it does feel selfish at first, but it's not at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, there's one question that I ask all my guests that come on this show, and it's just a glimpse at hindsight and the things that we learn in our lives. So that's what is one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
I would just say to him to keep going and listen to your conscience and God. Keep going and listen to your conscience and God. And I mean that as in, when that child was able to be calm and not cry, not scream, not yell, and just like look at somebody in the eye and just not give a reaction, it wasn't me deciding to do that. Something, whether it's God, ancestors, the universe, whatever spiritually told me to do that, and I felt better. And every time I did it, my power in myself went up, and I was like, let me just keep getting guided by it. And when you just listen to your conscience more, there's a phrase called conscious congruency that happens. So because I felt that calmness, my advice would just be listen to your conscience and listen to God more, and just be present. Be present. If you need to cry, release. If you need to yell in the car and grab a steering wheel and just yell F, do it. If you need to like spend time in nature, do it. But your conscience is going to guide you to do that thing. And the last thing will be, if people feel that they can't hear their conscience, they think they can't hear it, but the moment they go to grab the drink, the cigarette, or to go to the social setting, that is their conscience telling them to sit, but they're going to use these vices. So their conscience does speak to them, but their pattern is go do these things, food, people, social, drugs, alcohol, sex, whatever. So their conscience is telling them something, but right before it speaks loud enough, they take control with the vices. So just pause for a moment, pause, and then just listen to your conscience more, because at least my belief is that's God speaking to you through you. So when you can just pause, you can slowly begin to make better decisions, which gives you your power.
Absolutely. That is a beautiful answer. I couldn't agree with you more. And that it's that the mindful intention that you take in your life. I can tell it really comes through. And that calm was the word that was coming to me, which I have realized is my place that I operate best from too. I have a sign in my house that says cultivate calm, because it just
Nice.
reminds me that's where I like to operate from. And that really comes through in the way that you communicate. So thank you so much for all
I
of this
appreciate it.
great
Thank you,
conversation.
Wendy.
Yeah, it's been amazing. And where can people find you to get in touch?
Yeah, so people can find me on any app. It's Fit with Derick 2, Derick with the number 2. And then on my coaching website, I just like to show real people with real results, pictures, videos, and people sharing their journey. And that's why I love the power of video, because they look the same. There's a lot of Photoshop and Facetune out there. So real people, real results. But then they can see the smile, the calmness, the confidence. And when they're like, I used to not know who I was, binge eating, had a divorce, all these things. So I just like to show real aspects of people. And then last but not least is my intent with any social media app is to make people think and to plant a seed. When they're about to hit snooze again and they saw a video, they're like, yeah, he's sticking in my head. That's all I like to do, is plant a seed so they elevate their life. And they're like, you know what? I've been spinning my wheels too long. And that's all it is. Planting seeds each and every day to show up, to make people want to do better for themselves and for others.
That is beautiful. That's what great coaches do. And I can tell you're one of them. So thank you so much for this conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thanks again for having me, Wendy.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining us on What I Meant to Say today. I'm your host, Wendy Jones, here with Derick Johnson, and we're just here to remind you, be real, be you, and be better. Thank you for joining us on What I Meant to Say, another production of Inspired Edutainment, brought to you by Be Better Media.